Juneteenth has a whole new meaning this year, coinciding with calls for racial equality. This hour, the history of the holiday, stories of pain and progress, and now national action. And good morning, everyone. I'm Sally McDonald, live alongside Lena DeFlorias. We're here at two of our area's most significant places in the history of Juneteenth. I'm here at the beautiful Emancipation Park in 3rd Ward, where former slaves pooled together their money in order to start this park and celebrate freedom back in 1865. And Lena is live in Galveston at Ashton Villa, where General Granger read the Emancipation Proclamation. Let's start there, Lena.
Yeah, good morning. You know, and this is not only the location where it was read, we're actually on the balcony where General Granger made that public announcement, reading the Emancipation Proclamation to let people know that enslaved black people were no longer enslaved, but instead emancipated. You see the statue of General Granger there to mark the moment. This is the 41st annual Al Edwards Juneteenth celebration here at this location. But we're talking about 155 years of history now culminating in this one day, this one moment of really national awareness. And to bring in Jose Grignon, he has been doing extensive research, putting together more information about the historical significance of this day, Jose, because so many people were not really as familiar maybe with Juneteenth and its meaning for African American people.
So very true. You know, General Granger was a two-star general. When he arrived in Galveston on this day back in 1865, he commanded a contingent of colored troops. Now, they were the law and order of the land at that time, and they played a big part in liberating a lot of enslaved individuals in our area. Some of those soldiers even went on to become Buffalo Soldiers. Juneteenth is a commemoration of freedom for the descendants of Africans, even though they were freed 2.5 years earlier, when President Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation.
It clearly states that the slaves would be free when federal troops occupied the territory. And that occurred on June 19, 1865, when Major General Gordon Granger landed in Galveston, read the proclamation, but he had 300 black troops with him to enforce the law.
Captain Paul Matthews founded the National Buffalo Soldiers Museum in Houston and says enforcing the law wasn't that easy because there was a war still going on.
Even though they had surrendered in Virginia, the Texas forces were still engaging in battle. So they had to send in the U.S. colored troops. Many of them, more than half of the Union soldiers that were in Texas in 1865 were the U.S. colored troops. So they were the ones that came in and secured the area and ended the Civil War.
It was a mission that took months to accomplish for these colored soldiers as they moved across the state.
And they moved from Galveston to Houston.
Throughout Texas, yeah, throughout Harris County, Fort Bend County, going to the different plantations and freeing the slaves. They were the law and order. And so, as you can imagine, there was conflict between the U.S. colored troops or the black soldiers who were enforcing the law and the white establishment.
And now, because of their mission to free slaves in Texas, we commemorate this day in their honor. You know, and some of those soldiers who helped liberate the slaves in our area and in the state of Texas went on to move out west, and they became what we now know as the Buffalo Soldiers. And if you've never been to the National Buffalo Soldiers Museum, you might want to put it on your list of things to do, because there's a lot of history there that you still don't find in history books in this state and in other states as well. Lena?
You know, Jose, thank you, because there's so much history that people are unfamiliar with. And we do like to focus as well on the significance of the day on its own, but also the significance in this particular day and time. And Darlene Janik Fairs, it shows us the significance of this day to this area.
Although Abraham Lincoln had signed the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1st, 1863, It took a long, unbelievable stretch of months for the news to arrive in the port of Galveston. And when General Granger and crew arrived in Galveston for that purpose on June 17, 1865, the African American labor team on the wharf found out the reason for this ship's arrival and started rejoicing.
He and 2,000 federal troops sailed into Galveston Harbor, and from the Osterman building on June 19th, General Granger issued 5 general orders.
I would draw your attention to General Order number 3.
General Order number 3 alerted the slaves of Texas that they had been freed 2 years prior.
This involves an absolute equality of personal rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves.
The general's troops then marched here to the Custom House, built in 1861. They read the 5 general orders again.
All slaves are free.
Well, Galveston was the major port on the Texas coast, and the news was read here. From Galveston, the news was just disseminated out to the rest of the state.
My great-grandparents had been enslaved and were living on Bolivar, on the peninsula across from Galveston. And that when they heard of the proclamation of freedom, that made a huge difference in that they were able, my great-great-grandparents, Horace and Emily Skoll, were able to come. I can only imagine that it was a combination of exciting and perhaps a little scary, venturing into the unknown. It was obviously a change of a major transition that was happening as African Americans were finally discovering that the Emancipation Proclamation had been read over 2 years earlier. So it was a time of opportunity. It was a time of hopefulness.
Now, this building, interestingly enough, in 1865, when the Emancipation Proclamation was read from this balcony, this was actually the Confederate Army headquarters building, adding to the significance of having it being read from this balcony to let enslaved people know that they were slaves no more. And Sally, you're at Emancipation Park, which has its own history as well.
Welcome back to Emancipation Park here, the oldest park in the city of Houston. We're joined by the mayor of Houston this morning. Mayor, thank you so much for your time. Happy Juneteenth to you.
Happy Juneteenth.
Does this day resonate more this year given the recent protests?
Look, with all of the unrest, with the death of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Omri, all of those individuals, it means so much. The marches, the protests, the demonstrators, Black Lives Matter, the emphasis on that. And look, it just doesn't, Black lives just didn't start mattering right now. They've always mattered. And when you go back to 1865, Juneteenth, when General Granger came to Texas in Galveston on the 3rd floor of the veranda, reading General Order number 3, letting people know that Abraham Lincoln had signed the Emancipation Proclamation, declaring that the slaves in this country, in Texas, were finally free. That's great news. It's great news then. It remains great news today.
Mayor, where do you see this movement going now in the city of Houston after you've put forth some changes and some orders just within the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, but I will tell you it was the beginning and not the end. What people are looking for is they're looking for fundamental, substantive fundamental change, transformation, okay? They don't want an incrementalist approach. So we're listening, and I think it's important to respond. And look, it's not just about policing accountability and making policing truly community relational policing, but it's also about investing in communities and neighborhoods like the one that we're currently in. What people are saying, don't overlook communities that have been underserved and under-resourced for decades. So in 3rd Ward, in the trade, provide the investment that can help transform people's lives. In 5th Ward, the Nickel, in the East End, in Magnolia Park, in Acres Homes, Sunnyside, South Park, I can go on and on, but there are still too many communities and neighborhoods that are not viewed as communities of opportunity, because we haven't invested in them in a real transformational way. And if you do that, you don't have to expend all of your resources on trying to police these communities and incarcerate people from these communities. And so it has to be a situation where the community and the police are working together, but you do that by investing in a real way in the development in these communities and the people and the families and the children that are there.
And Mayor, in the last 30 seconds or so that we have you, you've
Yes.
removed 2 Confederate statues from
Yes.
city parks to give them more context in other places. Do you anticipate moving any more?
Well, we're looking at that. There will probably be 1 or 2 others that will probably be removed as well. Look, it's about removing the power that these statues have carried with them way too long. This is not the time to glorify them. That's what we should not be doing. You can't celebrate, in a sense, Juneteenth and talk about freedom and liberation, and at the same time have monuments or statues that talk about suppression and enslavement. The two just don't work together, and they certainly don't work together in the most diverse city in the United States of America. You know, look, I'm an African-American mayor. I cannot overlook that. I represent everybody, but I am an African-American. And we all have to be true to our history, and quite frankly, I have to be true to me as well.
Mayor Turner, thank you so much for your time. We know you are a very busy man. Happy Juneteenth to you, and hope you have a relaxing weekend
It's
with your family. All righty, we'll see you soon. And up next, from humble beginnings here at Emancipation Park to a multi-million-dollar renovation, we're going to take a closer look at the transformation of Emancipation Park. Celebrations have been held here at Emancipation Park since 1872. It is a story of struggle and then triumph, and Jose Grignon is live to share it. Hi, Jose. Thank you.
Good morning, Sally. You know, imagine you have just left slavery. You're trying to figure out what to do with your lives. But 7 years after freedom was really discovered here in the state of Texas, a group of community leaders got together, pooled their funds, and purchased Emancipation Park. Emancipation Park became a part of Houston's post-slavery history when black community leaders purchased 10 acres of land just a few years after their own freedom.
In 1872, you had community leaders pull together $800 to purchase the original 10 acres of land that is Emancipation Park today, solely for the purpose of folks in our community could have a place to gather. They couldn't go anywhere else. And coming out of slavery, they had the mindset, the fortitude to think about something larger than themselves individually.
Through the years, the park had fallen into disrepair, but a $33 million investment was made several years ago by the city to improve the park and its amenities.
That is the largest investment in any community of color in this city's history.
Now Manning would like to make sure the park serves everyone while maintaining its historical perspective.
Most people, the average Joe public, does not have a good understanding of the contribution that African Americans made to the shaping of this country, to the building of this country. And so, you know, we want to try to use this as an education tool, but also, you know, just rethink the utility of green space and parks and how we use it as an aggregation tool, you know, kind of bringing folks together and educating them at the same time.
Manning says the educational component will help people better understand the history of Emancipation Park and the Juneteenth commemoration it will continue to host every year. You know, it's amazing that you have some folks who could have been thinking about other things, trying to make their lives better, but they thought of this community. They thought of putting something together where people who were free now would be able to remember and commemorate that freedom for eternity. Sally, back to you.
Jose, thank you. Next, Juneteenth celebrations here at Emancipation Park go virtual this year. But first, before we go to break, a special message from this year's honorary chair, actress Felicia Rashad.
Growing up in Houston, Texas, Juneteenth was always a very special day. It was a day of barbecues and picnics, of red soda water and watermelon and hot dogs and what else? Hamburgers, and just a really good time in the community. And a lot of that was had on the grounds of Emancipation Park.
Welcome back as we focus on the celebration that is Juneteenth today, June 19th. I'm Lena DeFlores. Welcome back. You know, in Missouri City, there is a live oak tree that gets its name from history right here in Texas. And Melissa Wilson is going to share with us about the history behind the tree.
The myth is that the Freedom Tree was the location where slaves on the farmer plantation heard that their lives have changed as a result of the Emancipation Proclamation. In other words, they were free at the time.
Missouri City has developed around the Freedom Tree. The spot was named a city park several years ago.
And that tree is about 6 feet in diameter. I think it's over 500 years old. It's registered with the U.S. Forestry. It's a stately tree, and it's something that we really should cherish and also pay homage to as often as we can.
And slaves are believed to have sought shelter under these massive branches, also using it as a gathering place.
It was a place where the field workers would take refuge from the sun and the heat. And then on Sundays, when they were allowed for leisure time, they would be under the tree for a picnic together.
And that made it an appropriate spot for soldiers to bring good news to the enslaved.
We celebrate not necessarily the passing of the Emancipation Proclamation, but the enforcement of the Emancipation Proclamation, which was the 19th of June, 1865, 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation was passed on bill into law.
Freedom Tree has been a part of the official Juneteenth celebration in most cities for the past 18 years. There will be an invitation-only commemoration of the site on Saturday.
And that was Melissa Wilson reporting. You know, the celebration in Missouri City has been postponed until next year because of the pandemic, of course. Although they're still giving back to their community, they're going to have a healthcare giveaway of sorts where they'll be giving out masks and hand sanitizer to anyone who needs them. That's happening tonight at 6 at the park at Glen Oaks Park. So that's happening tonight at 6. But also we have events that are happening just in a different way. Some are going virtual. Some are still giving back to the community in different ways, but still the celebration still happening today as it has for the last 155 years. Sally.
Hi, Lena. That's absolutely right. Emancipation Park celebration has gone virtual today, a 3-week-long virtual celebration, in fact, and today is the last day. I'm joined by Emancipation Park Conservancy's Executive Director, Lucy Beaumont. You have done an excellent job with this hashtag, We Are Juneteenth. Tell me how people have been using it and sharing it.
Yeah, it's amazing using it and sharing it. I think it's a unique opportunity to do exactly what we'd have done here at the park, but do it virtually, which means it benefits not just the city of Houston and people in Texas, but all over the world, and we're excited about it.
So tell us what you have planned for today, because there's a lot of virtual events that people can take part in.
So for today, we have storytelling with the kids who are here for summer camp at about 11. It's a closed environment. We're feeding first responders, because normally what would have happened here at the park, we would be feeding people, right? So people are not coming to the park engaging, so we're going to a police substation, a fire substation, and we're going to be feeding them some Juneteenth food, right? So, and then the other thing that's happening from 2 to 5 today, we're having the virtual celebration. We will be kicking it off with our honorary chair, Felicia Rashad, of course, all virtual, if you will. And we're also paying tribute to Mr. Juneteenth, Al Edwards. You know, he got this party started, I think it's befitting, he's not with us anymore, to share the story about Juneteenth and how it got started. And then later after that, we'll turn it into just like what would happen here, a lot of entertainment from local entertainers. And then we have a cooking class at 6 o'clock, and then, a lot of Juneteenth food. But then at 7 o'clock, we have a DJ. We're going to have a party just like they did back in 1872.
Oh, Lucy Beaumont, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
And the park is absolutely beautiful. The renovations with the rec center, the cultural center, and the aquatic center. So hopefully it will be bustling again by next year at least.
We hope so. We hope so. So just come and see us at Emancipation Park. When this new normal is all up, we're ready for you.
Okay.
Thank you.
We are going to take a short break now, and we will meet you right back here.
Back to Fox 26 as we celebrate Juneteenth on this June 19th. I call your attention to a photo from 1980 where we were celebrating Juneteenth right here in Galveston, the birthplace of Juneteenth here in Texas. One of the men in this photo is Doug Matthews, who is the Juneteenth coordinator here in Galveston. Sir, I know that this year is different than the past 4 decades in that it's the COVID is coming into play, but you're still giving back to the community the same way you always have.
Yes, this has been a historic event that occurred in Galveston, celebrating our freedom as an African American in the United States.
And you're doing it differently in that normally you have a very large breakfast where a lot of young people and a lot of people from the community come together, but to observe social distancing, you're still giving back by giving out 1,000 meals.
Yeah, we're giving out 1,000 meals to senior citizens through the local churches, but we've been celebrating here Juneteenth for the last 41 years.
And Representative Al Edwards, who recently passed away, was instrumental in making this a holiday so that more people can be aware of the significance and the history.
Yes, what Al Edwards did during his freshman year as a state legislature in 1978, he sponsored a bill making June 19th a state paid holiday. And June the 13th, 1979, Governor Bill Clemens signed it into law, and we've been celebrating ever since.
Okay, well, thank you so much for sharing the history with people who may not be familiar, and for your 4 decades of work to make this as special as it can be, even in the middle of a pandemic. There's so much history here in our area, and for you and your fellow viewers, something special is happening today. The Houston Museum of African American Culture is reopening their doors today on Juneteenth. That's no coincidence.
If there's a Houston neighborhood that can identify with Juneteenth, Freedmanstown in 4th Ward is the one. The community was built for the freed slaves, and they hand-laid the iconic brick roads themselves. History that remains intact today after a fierce fight from residents and activists. Now, in cities all across the country, Confederate statues are being removed, defaced, or in some cases even taken down by protesters in what has been a nationwide rejection of those principles that these individuals and symbols have stood for, including 2 right here in Houston. The Dick Dowling and Spirit of the Confederacy statues were removed and relocated this week in order to provide them with greater historical context. Now, that last one, the Spirit of the Confederacy, will be displayed at the Houston Museum of African American Culture, which just happens to reopen today on this Juneteenth. Here's a look.
When you drive up, the biggest thing we want people to see is the big sign that says HMAC, so they know where they're going. The Houston Museum of African American Culture, very simply, has always been a multicultural conversation on race geared towards a common future. The current exhibition that we open with on Juneteenth is called The Souls of Black Folk. And The Souls of Black Folk is a famous book by W.E.B. Du Bois. Families are a very big, important part of this museum. And so this is just another occasion where people can bring their kids and feel their culture. Well, every Juneteenth has been very special for us here at the museum. Anytime you celebrate Juneteenth, it's a commemoration of the freedom of all Americans. It is the date that all Americans were free. It is our real national holiday, much like July 4th, but certainly Juneteenth. Exhibitions on indifference, exhibitions on democracy. This is who we are, and that's a multicultural conversation. I think there's no question that the community responds. There'll be events here, there'll be events all over the city. It's a national holiday, and here's no different.
And thanks so much to photographer Rodney Pearson for that piece. The museum's new hours are Friday and Saturday from 11 until 6. Now, Juneteenth is still not a national holiday, but calls to make it one have been gaining momentum. We're going to talk about that a little bit more later on. But right now, let's go back to Galveston and check in with Lena live at Ashton Villa.
46 states do recognize Juneteenth and wanting to share that history, although it's not a federal holiday. Senator John Cornyn has introduced that legislation to fellow lawmakers to make it a federal holiday. It's something that the niece of Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. has been calling for years now.
I believe it's very important that there be an executive order declaring Juneteenth as a national holiday. That won't be a time to just celebrate, but to use transformation, love, and peace to have America come together.
Now, we were asking your fellow viewers, how much did you really know about Juneteenth before it came into the forefront this year? Well, several of your fellow viewers say they were aware of it, but they'd like to know more. Others said that they really didn't know very much about it. That's why we're doing this special now, to share with you a little bit of the history and significance of the day. Now, if you want to join that poll, you'll find it online at fox26houston.com. That's also where you'll find more articles to teach you more about the history and significance of the day. Now, when we come back, we are going to take a look at 75 years in the making. You know, one of the most examples of racial tension here in the United States happened right here in Texas. A filmmaker is now bringing it to the forefront so people can learn about the Beaumont race riots.
Welcome back to Emancipation Park here in 3rd Ward. A lot of people have been coming by to look at this sign about the legacy of the park. There were a number of things that still made it difficult for Black Americans after the end of slavery. This week is also the 77th anniversary of the Beaumont race riot, a little-known historical event that inspired an award-winning short film. And I spoke with the creator of that film, who says he wants people to research history more so that it's not repeated.
You want me to stay after what happened last night?
The race riot, I feel like a lot of it is fear. A lot of that came from fear.
Gordon Williams and a group of diverse artists made the film The Example that tells the story of the 1943 Beaumont race riot sparked by a sudden influx of workers during World War II.
What was the situation in Beaumont like at the time that really prompted the riots?
Black and white, living in close quarters. There was also competition for jobs. And there were food shortages, housing shortages. So the close quarters made things very difficult. And also, there was a planned Juneteenth celebration that was supposed to happen right around the time that there was a Klan convention or rally that was supposed to happen.
Black citizens were assaulted while whites looted and burned their homes and businesses. Williams made the film to try and find commonality.
It's about love, it's about humanity. And I want people to watch the film and have a conversation about it, share it, because I feel like the real change has to start at home, internally, and then hopefully we'll see a collective good from having conversations and getting to know your fellow man.
You said that as filmmakers, your goal is often to get on the big screen, but in this case, you want to be on the small screen inside people's homes.
I think it's fitting that, you know, Juneteenth is happening around Father's Day weekend because there's a strong theme of fatherhood that goes through this movie.
Fatherhood and legacy. The example is available to watch on Amazon Prime, just 20 minutes long, but enough time, Williams hopes, for understanding and healing. Very powerful film, and a lot of people who watch it say the message has never been more relevant than it is today. Up next, a growing list of companies are now making a powerful statement for the first time on Juneteenth. We'll have that story next.
So Juneteenth is a powerful symbol of where we have come from and where we have yet to go.
For the first time ever, more than a dozen companies have given employees off to celebrate Juneteenth. Nike, JCPenney, Ben & Jerry's, Target, Uber, and Lyft, among others, are all declaring today a company-wide holiday. And the NFL is also making Juneteenth a league-wide holiday, and this comes after the commissioner apologized for at first dismissing concerns over racial inequality. Let's bring in Fox 26's Nate Griffin now to talk more about this. Hey there, Nate.
Good morning, Sally, to you. And of course, I think the league is listening now. Roger Goodell and the league, they're listening. So are other sports, as well as the NBA. We know that the Rockets also have the day off. Now, we spoke with current Klein Oak head football coach and former NFL linebacker Jason Glenn, who applauds the league for this. He talks about the Colin Kaepernick protest and what he told his players about this moment in time.
I told him we are in a very, very strange time in this country, first of all. We talked about not being divided. A lot of times you have social media and different entities bringing up things, and also, you know, they also make it to where, because I understand the whole media perspective, right? Social media, I get it. And some of the things on there are not very positive in a lot of ways, right? And sometimes the way that it's presented, it can be presented to divide a lot of different, you know, races, religions, and everything else. So I just talk to our kids about, we cannot let that divide us.
I want to ask you about Juneteenth. Juneteenth now being recognized as a holiday, particularly with professional football and professional basketball teams now recognizing it as a holiday. You are a professional or former professional football player. I'd like to know your thoughts about that and what that means to you.
I think it's awesome. I really do. I think it's a great way to try to build some more unity. I think it's a great way to try to get the understanding of African Americans and their culture and their history. I think, well, I know that it does that. I also know that it is starting to spread about, hey, there are some issues that we have in this country with racism, and I think the understanding part is finally coming around.
Why do you think it took people so long to understand why he took the knee?
Every single person needs to listen to be able to get understanding. I think that is the main thing that we are getting now. People are starting to listen to each other more and wanting to do better. Not just white, not just Black, Asian, Hispanic, and everybody is starting to listen to each other.
Powerful message, strong man, and I love his convictions. And certainly he's going to go far in the coaching ranks. But tell you what, he's a better man, and we certainly appreciate the time that he gave us. Live from the home sports studio, Nate Griffin, Fox 26 Morning Sports.
Nate, thanks so much. Up next, support for Black-owned businesses has grown in the last couple of months. We are going to highlight them for you after this break.
What Juneteenth means to me is an opportunity to reflect on my ancestors' journey and their resilience to get me to where I am today.
You know, only 4% of businesses in the United States are Black-owned. And if you want to show your support for Black business owners, you should check them out. So Ruben Dominguez is going to introduce us to Grits Company Clothing.
Why is the company called Grits?
Grits is like, Grits is, well, our motto is like no grits, no glory, right? So the hard work in life is the glory you get out of it. So I think that's like a human condition, and just like that really just sums up about our lifestyles. But then also, like, growing up in the South, I wanted something that just kind of represented us, that felt like that was from here. And I wanted, just kind of make something that's cool, but just felt like what the South is blues, is rock and roll. It's very American. It's very American in its identity.
For a small business like you guys, what's the growth been like?
Really, it's been kind of steady. Like when I first started, I was like pretty young, so I did like kind of like the streetwear stuff here. We did like Sneaker Summit, things like that.
When COVID hit, everybody started shopping online. Did you see a spike in business?
Yeah, we saw a big spike in business. I mean, we were already sold out of things already on our site, and I mean, people were buying everything from little stuff like our stickers, our patches, just anything they could grab, they were grabbing it. And so we've been sending out orders all this time. Even our shirts that we had, very few of, or limited sizes, they bought those. And
that just kind of made up for some of the events that were like pretty much kind of closed out for the rest of the year.
People are so done with 2020. So what is the plan for you guys for 2021?
To be better than 2020. The biggest thing is hopefully there's no diseases coming along, there's no hurricanes, there's no race riots. We're hoping that 2021 we can live in harmony.
Can we just all breathe?
Right.
Can we? Yes. Can we all just breathe?
That was Ruben Dominguez reporting there. And you might be thinking, well, I'd love to know what other businesses are Black-owned here in our area. We have a list for you at fox26houston.com. Everything from lawyers and accountants to fitness trainers and bakeries as well. It's a very comprehensive list if you want to check that out. It's online again at fox26houston.com. That's also where we have articles to give you more information and history about Juneteenth. Now, Hollywood is celebrating Juneteenth with a film that was made right here in Texas with the people who live here in Texas.
What does Juneteenth, aka Emancipation Day, aka Freedom Day, aka the Black Independence Day mean to me? To me, it means that I get to walk around this country free, owning the things that I want instead of someone owning me.
Welcome back. Hollywood is celebrating Juneteenth with a new film, Miss Juneteenth. It's set in Texas. It stars two Texans, and BackstageOL.com's Dave Morales spoke with both of them.
Yeah, fantastic movie. The coming-of-age drama is now streaming digitally, video on demand. Two Texans in the cast, Kendrick Sampson and Alexis Jaquez. We had a chance to talk with them. This is Miss Juneteenth.
The winner of Miss Juneteenth will receive a full scholarship to any historically Black institution of your choice.
Good luck. I know that you are looking to replicate your success. What's her problem? I beat her.
Kendrick, when I found out that not only was this movie made in Texas, but I also found out that it's a Texas cast, and I found out that I've seen you on How to Get Away with Murder. We have that mutual friend, Viola Davis. But here's the thing. I had no idea you were from H-Town.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in Mo City. I was born in Houston. Grew up in Mo City, not too far from the Freedom Tree. Used to go to Galveston every summer. So this was a special movie to be a part of, and also playing Nathan in Insecure, being from Houston as well. I love my city, my hometown.
Well, and now you're on Fox 26, so it's all come full circle for you, my friend.
I love that.
I just want to give you a big round of applause. I cannot believe this is your film debut. You are fantastic.
Thank you.
What was it like to play this character for you?
It was like second nature in a way, because I am a Black girl. I'm not far from Kai's age. Just at her age, she's like 1 year younger than I was when I figured out what in the world I wanted to do. She's maturing, she's growing, she's trying to find herself in a world that, that doesn't deem her as, if she does what she wants to do, they might look at her one way. And her mother wants her to be successful. Her mother wants her to have a life where she doesn't go through the same thing that they're going through at the moment. And just growing up, I can relate to that, whether it wasn't, if it was me specifically. There were times that it was me specifically, because it's like how I can relate to trying to find myself. I knew of people who lived that same life, whose parents, whose mothers were single mothers. Though her dad is somewhat present in her life, majority is her mother taking care of her. So even if it wasn't me exactly, I knew someone who lived that same life, and I could relate to that, and I know what they went through on the back end. Just growing up as a Black girl in this society, it wasn't too hard. And with everything going on now, especially, it was like second nature. It was.
I'm not cute or built to suit a fashion model size.
That's my baby.
Phenomenal woman, that's me.
I'll say it again. It is a powerful coming-of-age movie. Critics love this film. It's near 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. I really enjoyed seeing this movie. Miss Juneteenth is now streaming digitally, video on demand. You can watch it at home this weekend.
Dave, thank you. And that is going to do it for us. We sure thank you for joining us for this hour. We hope it was meaningful to you and that you learned something. Lena, we're going to keep the conversation going on our Facebook page for our after show coming up in just a minute from now.
Yep, so we have 1 minute to get comfy, regroup, and we'll meet you online. Thanks for having us in your homes.